All right, so Mamdani is in his transition right now, not that kind transition to his administration.
Yeah, that the other one, that's for his second term.
The other one, that's for, well, he wants to get settled in before he
Yeah.
introduces that policy. Okay, so there's been a lot of questions about how Mamdani would govern. He took a picture with Alex Soros that raised a lot of consternation. So these are some of the moves he's making so far, and a lot of them are good. For example, Mamdani is supporting the Starbucks boycott. Starbucks, this is from his X account. Starbucks workers across the country are on an unfair labor practices strike fighting for a fair contract. While workers are on strike, I won't be buying any Starbucks, and I'm asking you to join us. Together, we can send a powerful message. No contract, no coffee. And he quote tweeted out the Starbucks Workers United, that's the Starbucks union, their announcement of this strike and their request not to buy Starbucks. Now, this shouldn't be as remarkable as it is, but it is. It is, especially in New York City. You got a Starbucks everywhere in New York City. And I know whenever we do a segment like this, I I know you're going to get a lot of peasant-minded people say, "But what about the profit?" Okay, they just paid $100 fucking million to their new CEO, who they brought over from Chipotle for 4 months for a 4 month contract. Do you know how long the average Starbucks employee would have to work to make $100 million? 6,000 years.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I'm
No, I
literally,
know.
that's the number.
Yeah, no, I know.
6,000 years. So, yeah, if they can afford to pay a guy $100 million for 4 months' work, yeah, they can afford to pay their workers more. It's not that that money is not there in the system, it's that they don't want to give it to workers.
Of
This
course.
idea that these companies are going to go broke if they pay their workers more when they have CEOs making hundreds of millions of dollars is absurd. It's not that the money's not there, it's that they don't want to give it to the workers. Um, this is from Business Insider. The open ended strike coincided with Red Cup Day when the chain offers free reusable holiday cups to customers. Historically, it's driven record sales for the company. On Thursday, when the strike began, roughly 1,000 workers across 65 stores were expected to strike, according to the union. The work stoppage could expand to more than 500 stores if negotiations do not resume, the union said in a statement on Thursday. In the U.S., Starbucks has 16,864 stores, according to its most recent earnings report. Unionized stores represent roughly 9,500 baristas, or 4% of the retail labor force, according to a Starbucks spokesperson. The strike comes amid stalled contract negotiations at the coffee giant and also follows the company's announcement of a restructuring that led to the closure of more than 600 stores across the U.S. It's the fourth strike that the union has organized since 2023, and it's the third to have taken place since CEO Brian Niccol began leading the company in September 2024. What they don't mention, I'm not calling them out. They did an article. It's a fair article. But yeah, I don't think that guy's name should be mentioned without mentioning that he got $100 million for a 4 month contract. Like every time you say this guy's name, you should bring that up. Despite Workers United, quote, despite Workers United's efforts to cause disruption, more than 99% of our coffee houses remain open, and our partners delivered the strongest reusable Red Cup Day in company history. See, they're environmentally friendly, folks. Building on last Thursday's holiday launch, which was the biggest sales day ever for the company, a spokesperson told Business Insider on Friday. Footnote, Starbucks has lost money for the last 6 quarters in a row. Mamdani lending support to the striking baristas represents an early indication of how he may use the bully pulpit of his office as mayor of New York City. The Democratic Socialist state assemblyman has long positioned himself as an ally to labor. Um, So what else is he doing? He's working on universal child care, which will be difficult to get the funding for, but he's appointed people to start working on it. This is from Politico. Mamdani, a Democratic socialist, is embarking on the endeavor amid rising child care costs. The average expense for families in New York City is around $26,000 for infants and toddlers, according to the Citizens Committee for Children of New York. And in 41 states, the average annual price of center-based infant care has exceeded in-state university tuition. That's most of the country, 80% of the country. Families with young children were twice as likely to leave the city than those without young children, according to a report by the nonpartisan think tank Fiscal Policy Institute released last year. And this is something I always say about New York. It's very weird because it is kind of a place without children. It's like a place without families. It's really a place for young, single professionals. The only place you see kids is housing projects. Outside of that, you really don't. And ironically, that's part of why Mamdani won, because you've got an unusually youthful demographic in New York that are particularly amenable to these policies because capitalism hasn't worked for them. You know, you sit down, you talk to, and again, I don't want to hear from all the boomers. I know it's not you, it's not you, it's not you. You talk to a lot of these boomers, you know, capitalism worked for them. Like they just can't wrap their heads around the circumstances that this generation is growing up in. It's not that they're morally better than the boomers were, it's that they're growing up in a very different economy. If they had the opportunities the boomers had, they'd be as pro-capitalist as the boomers were, but it's not working for them. So you hear a lot of talk about how the billionaires are going to flee New York. And Jon Stewart had Lena Khan, who's now the co-chair of Mamdani's transition team, former head of the FTC under Biden. He had her on, and she made a very good point. Well, what about working people who are leaving the city? Why don't we, isn't that a problem? Why isn't that a problem?
You know, because they do say people have fled to Florida and Texas. Does the city actually suffer in those times? It doesn't seem like millionaires leaving the city is the threat they think it is, I guess is what I'm getting at.
I mean, I'd say a couple of things. Look, you always want to be mindful of what's going to happen to the tax base. But I think the question that the mayor-elect Mamdani was asking was, well, working people are already fleeing New York. They're already having to leave New York because they can't afford to live here. And shouldn't we care about that too, right? And his campaign has been explicitly to make this a place where bus drivers, janitors, security guards, teachers, right? People who are kind of keeping the day-to-day running of the city where they have a chance as well. And I think that's the part of the conversation that we too often don't focus enough on. And that's what he's trying to solve for.
I think that's a great point, Lena. And
no, because working people are the Ubermensch.
Right.
Right.
They don't
We're not
give
supposed
a
to kiss the feet of the working person. Right.
Right. They don't give a shit about that. When I live here, man. You never heard Adams talk about we need to create a city where working people can live. He never talked about that. He didn't care about that. When they were telling people, yes, well, we can't have socialism, and Cuomo's coming out trying to stir up this boogeyman. This is why it wasn't effective, other than him being a terrible spokesperson for anything, really, given his history. Why would anybody be scared of that when this is the reality? They want to look for all these why did Mamdani win? Right there. Manhattan rents jumped near record high in month before Zoran Mamdani's win as supply remains low. And their answer to that, and this is what's amazing to me about these establishment politicians. They talk as if what they've been doing has been working. Oh, well, you don't want to mess with this because, hey, you know, you gotta do this and you gotta sacrifice a goat in a cement mixer before you can bring down prices, and just trust us. Just trust us. We've done such a great job so far. It didn't work because people, you know what? They listened to that for decades, not just in New York, worldwide. Neoliberalism has dominated no matter what political party orientation has been in charge, neoliberalism has been the order really since Reagan and Thatcher. We've had over 40 years of that. Where has it brought the world? It's not even just America. There's a worldwide problem of gentrification and increasing inequality. These people are desperately trying to use the same old Cold War propaganda, which still works on old people because they were indoctrinated with that. It's not working on people under 40, and it's terrifying them. So Lena Khan, this is the big question you always get when you have these reforms. Well, how are you going to make this happen? How are you going to get it through the legislature? What you hear from the Cuomos, what you hear from the Clintons is you can't do it, and from the Obamas, you can't do anything. No, we can't.
Yeah.
No, we can't. That's how the system works. The arc of the universe is long. Your grandchildren will have health care, right? Khan has been scouring city and state laws, some overlooked by past mayors, and some too new to have been tested yet, for legal footing for Mamdani's priorities. It's a skill set the Yale-trained lawyer wielded while running the FTC, where she dusted off laws, some dating from the early 20th century, and sued companies under novel theories of harm. Quote, excavating and enforcing the law is how one transition advisor put it. In her new role, Khan has identified an early avenue in a 56-year-old NYC prohibition on business practices deemed unconscionable, a designation expansive enough to delight any regulator, meant to protect captive consumers who lack other options for a particular good. The law has rarely been used. The only example of note this century appears to have been its use against retailers price gouging for face masks in March 2020. Khan has privately discussed targeting hospitals that bill patients for painkillers available more cheaply at corner drugstores and sports stadiums charging nosebleed prices for concessions, the people said. Okay, so you have this law that's very vaguely worded that they've dug up. Giuliani did something like that, not to as good a purpose. Giuliani dug up an old law from the Prohibition era that you couldn't dance in bars in order to start going after bars that he targeted. Other avenues for enforcement include a new state law that requires companies to tell customers when they are using algorithmic pricing. The law took effect this week, forcing Uber and DoorDash to start disclosing, but the incoming Mamdani administration plans to police laggards.
So she's like his Russ Vogt. This is like his Project 2025. Like basically figuring out, okay, how can we use the executive to the greatest extent possible to just do what we want to do?
Well,
so
you know
we can't
why?
be stymied by bureaucrats.
Yes, and actually, I can't remember if it was this Guardian article or the Semaphore article, but one of them actually made that comparison.
Right.
The way that Trump has used executive orders, the way they've tried to get around the bureaucracy by using these obscure sections of law. Yeah, that's exactly what they're trying to do because they know they're not getting this stuff through the legislature. In New York City, okay, so this is another thing. One of the reasons housing is getting so unaffordable is because private equity is coming in and they'll buy up a bunch of buildings and they'll roll it up into one big organization. But they're not just doing that there. If you saw Perfect Union did a great segment on how trailer parks have become unaffordable because private equity got into the trailer park market. They'll come in, buy up all of the competition, create a monopoly, and raise prices. You know, Lena Khan, there's another thing. These people are not radicals. Like Lena Khan is a capitalist. This is a capitalist vision. You're supposed to have competition.
She worked for Biden. She was his FTC chair.
Exactly. And this is too much. Like to paint these people like, you know, that this is Potemkin now. It's absolutely absurd. In New York City, private equity firms have been known to use aggressive tactics to get residents of rent-controlled buildings to leave so they can raise rents. They made, quote, they made it a hellhole for the tenants. They played all sorts of shitty little tricks on them, and they eventually moved, Kenny said. This is one expert they were asking. The real estate private equity firm Sugar Hill Capital Partners has been accused of allowing its buildings to become unlivable through problems like rat infestations, so that tenants in rent-controlled units will leave and the company can raise rents. Notably, Mamdani's campaign centered around making rent more affordable. Kenny thinks that Khan's appointment is most directed at private equity landlords. Okay, so you've had a real upwelling of enthusiasm for this administration, so much so that there have been 50,000 resumes submitted to work in the administration. Mamdani quote tweeted that stat saying, "With every resume we receive, we get closer to a better future for New York City, one where excellence in public services is the norm, not an anomaly. This is how we shape politics that works for everyone, not just the wealthy few." So here's CNBC reacting not only to Mamdani's election, but to the appointment of Lena Khan.
Wealthy, who might be looking for a therapist after yesterday's election. And more importantly, we're looking for therapy when they heard that Lena Khan was joining the transition team.
Which just goes to show you, looking back at the Biden administration, I mean, she had a very important job and we had her on all the time and hung on.
I think we should have her back and talk about what's going to happen in New York City.
But let's just know. Okay, so as long as we know what, I mean, she is a
sure. No, but that's what I'm saying.
She was running a very important department in the Biden administration.
Well, no, I wonder what it portends for business in New York. It was funny.
It's great for business. It's awesome.
A number of business leaders in New York reached out to me yesterday. I was traveling back from London, and it wasn't even the election result itself. It was when this Lena Khan announcement was made.
Right.
It was like they were sort of like frozen in place, and talked. I mean, some of the texting and back and forth was more about sort of what had happened to the merger business. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of bankers in this city, financiers in this city, and sort of what the approach is. I don't know if she's going to have a role in the future.
What can she do, though? I mean,
the future group or not?
What my question was, this appears to nationalize a city mayoral staff, right? Instead of saying we're going to operate the city as good managers, which is what the mayor's job is, it somehow makes it seem like we're going to be a platform for some national ideological.
I don't know. I mean, I was also surprised by.
Oh, you mean we're going to try to do
so
what we
many
campaigned
people
on?
Well, yeah, exactly. And this is, one of the things that is most maddening when you watch shows like this. They elevate people who have no business speaking about these matters to say just fucking nonsense. And they say it as if it's common sense. In what way did they what are you doing?
Oh, sorry.
In what way did they nationalize the election? And this tells you a lot about what their actual agenda is. She just wants to restore competitive practices. So why would business leaders be upset about that? Because they don't want competitive practices. They don't want capitalism. This is not an assault on capitalism, at least not Lena Khan's vision. It's an attempt to actually make capitalism function. Now, we can have our disagreements about taking that approach, but the idea that they find this so radical tells you a lot about what their actual agenda is.
From the de Blasio administration, of all things, and they were pointing to that as if.
Yeah. Oh, they appointed people with government experience. What do you think they were going to do? Appoint a bunch of people from Bloomberg's administration? Where were they going to mine talent from?
It's so funny how they invoke de Blasio as this arrow that we can't ever return to, as if the city crumbled. That was just, 4 years ago? City survived Bill de Blasio. I lived there under Bill de Blasio. It's fine.
Right.
It's fine. Not a big deal.
And you know what? For all they speak about him as this radical leftist, gentrification continued apace.
Of course.
Real estate development continued apace. Yeah. I think the Borg ship, Hudson Yards over there, opened under de Blasio. They continued to invest in the city. And you know what? His legacy is universal pre-K. So, he did something, did more
Right.
than Adams did. What did
Right.
Adams do? What did Adams do?
Right. What did Adams do? Exactly.
Okay, so this is you want to understand how absolutely disgusting the opposition is. This is a good example. This is Paul Sperry, and I want you to imagine somebody who is even a New York Post columnist, as right-wing as it is, posting something like this about any other ethnic group, any other religion. Trojan horse, ethnic Pakistani Muslim Lena Khan is leading NYC's first Muslim mayor, Zohra Mamdani's transition team, where she'll be able to place fellow Muslims throughout the government. Khan, an acolyte of Elizabeth Warren, is married to Shah Ali, a NYC cardiologist. Now, what you're supposed to take away from that, if you're the kind of person who would take Paul Sperry seriously, is not that he's a cardiologist, but that she's married to Shah Ali.
Shah Ali.
Dun, 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 dun. Very scary. Can you imagine if somebody put up, this gives this person the opportunity to put more Chinese people in government. She's married to Lin Ho.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, even
Jews.
the New York Post would fire this person.
Yeah.
If you wrote something equivalent about any other group. Ben Shapiro dropped this banger that got a lot of attention this week. I can't imagine why people are fleeing MAGA and conservatism in general with these wonderful solutions they're offering for people who can't afford to live in their cities.
Person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities.
Ain't that America? Get the fuck out! Yeah, that's very inspiring. I can't imagine why you guys saw 50-point swings in the election a couple of weeks ago. Look, without a true fascist takeover, I do think which is I certainly wouldn't rule out from this crew. I think you are seeing the last gasp of the long arc, as much as it's darkest before the dawn. I think this is the end of the conservative movement as we have known it for 40 or 45 years. I know it doesn't look that way right now, but they just went full mask off in a way that people are not going to forget anytime soon. They are no longer going to be able to claim they're not racist, they're not sexist, that it's about criminal. They're all of the stuff they use to shield what they actually believe. They're not going to be able to use that for a generation. It's going to take a generation before people forget what they actually revealed about themselves at a moment when they were drunk with power and just ripped the masks off. What do conservatives really think? Yeah, that's what they think. Yeah, well, you can't afford it. Well, go to Indiana. Things are cheap in Indiana. Why should you live there? Now, there was a part of this we decided not to do. I'll probably do it during the week. These billionaires, these millionaires, these developers, they're not leaving. They're not leaving. They did an article about this in CNBC, which is, like a racing sheet for degenerate stock market gamblers. It's not like a left-wing publication. Yeah, man, they interviewed real estate people, and yeah, they're getting they have contracts being signed for commercial space within 2 weeks, where normally it would take like a year to develop these contracts and to close a deal, 200,000 square foot kind of deals. These people are not actually leaving. You know why? Because the kinds of young professionals that they're looking for to work at places like Goldman Sachs, they don't want to live in Iowa. They just don't. Now, you could say they're snobs, but you can't say that when in your last breath, you were screaming that those people are going to leave New York. Which is it, right? They know that if they set up their corporate offices in some red state that young urban professionals don't want to live in, they're going to have a hard time soliciting talent. So they're not going anywhere. Yeah, sure, man. Like if you raise the tax on millionaires and billionaires 10%, 50%, yeah, I mean, I guess they would leave. 2%, they're not going anywhere. And the Daily Show, we can't use it because of copyright. They did a great bit showing going back 20 years. Every single time they make any kind of change that might threaten billionaires, all the media talking heads come out about how they're going to flee New York. They're not going to flee New York. New York is New York. People want to live here very often for reasons that at this point I'm uncomfortable with. You know, I talked about that the other day. When I ride my bike around New York, it looks to me like a convention of vampires waiting online for the new boba tea or the new slice joint, feeding really on the suffering of the workers. But yeah, man, that's a big part of what they come here for. And I don't think there's any other city in America that caters to that class as well as New York does. That was by design, from Giuliani through Bloomberg, through Adams, and to a large extent through de Blasio. They made it a playground for those people. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. Now, in terms of Mamdani, for the left, which got burned by the Squad, got burned by Bernie, there's a tendency to not call balls and strikes with anyone on the left. They'll do it with Marjorie Taylor Greene. They'll do it with Thomas Massey. You know, I don't agree with him on everything, but I thought he did a good job here. I do understand why they can't do that on the left, because you get more mad at people that you expect to be on your team than you would get mad at people that you don't consider in your ideological lane. But I think when you have a left movement that is just perpetually sour and constantly claiming defeat, even in the face of even small victories, it turns people off, man. It's a big turnoff. Look at MAGA, man. They'll claim victories even when they lose. You know, the smallest thing that they can claim for themselves, they will. With the left, you got a fucking pro-Palestine mayor in the most Zionist city that you were going to find on planet Earth outside of Israel, certainly the most Zionist city in America, who refused to concede the point multiple times in interviews and debates that Israel has a right to exist as an apartheid state. And the left won't take it as a win, man. They will not claim it as a win for their ideas, which they really should, because you know who's trying to make the argument that this does not demonstrate a win for their ideas? Bill Maher and the rest of the talking heads. Oh, look at Spamberger. Well, if you're not going to make the counter argument, you're ceding the conversation to those people. Now, that's not to say Mamdani's not gonna do things that are worth calling out, and we will when he does. But at the same time, like, you're not gonna celebrate that they're doing these things that are good, that he's supporting a strike from Starbucks. Like, you could still say, yeah, he took a picture with Alex Soros, he's leaving Jessica Tisch on, he keeps catering to these hysterical claims of anti-Semitism. You can say all that and still say, well, this stuff is good. Just like you imagine he's Thomas Massey.
Right. Or Donald Trump a year ago, for that matter. Right. Or like
Right.
any of these people. Right. Yeah. Look, the idea that he's backing that strike and supporting that boycott is hugely significant, especially in New York. Like, I mean, this would be like the mayor of LA saying boycott In-N-Out Burger. Right.
Right.
Like,
Right.
it's such a fixture. It's such a staple. And New York is such a rabidly anti-labor town. It really is. I want to read a very brief excerpt from an article by a guy named River Page, who's a great essayist, young guy, writer. I interviewed him on the audio show 5-6 years ago. And I would love to interview him again, except for the fact that he sold out. He writes for the Free Press now, so I just won't do it. I just won't have anything to do with him. But he did write an article about Mamdani that's paywalled, and obviously I'm not paying for the Free Press, but I did get to read the non-paywalled part of it. And he's a terrific writer, and he puts it very well. He says, every morning, I ride the Metro North into Grand Central Station, walk through the main concourse, and see the constellations painted on the ceiling. It is the only place in New York City where you can see the stars. You can't wish on them. You can't follow them north or agger the future in their twinkling. There is no future in this city. You will own nothing, and you will not be happy. In New York, you are on your own, and not even the heavens can help you. As you come and go to work, the stars will remain in the same place, and so will you, or at least you hope, because New York is a city for people who have everything and people who have nothing. For now, you are neither, but the voice in your head says not for long, and repeats it every day, because you know things can always get worse. There is no middle without a bottom. It's great writing. The guy's a great writer. It's a too bad he sold out to Barry Weiss. But the point there is that, yes,
Who is that?
That's a guy named River Page. Young guy. Great writer. And that is exactly what it is like to work and live in New York. You're expected to be the Page at NBC Studios until you sell that script, and then you'll have everything.
Right.
But
Yeah.
for now, you have nothing, right? You will make the coffee at the Starbucks until that modeling agency calls you. But until they call you, at that point, you'll have everything. You have nothing. That is the day-to-day dynamic of living in New York. It's a city for people who have everything and people who have nothing, who live in that, creaky studio in Chinatown that's falling apart, but who dream that one day they'll be on Park Avenue. That's it. There's no existence for a working class.
Well, and that's why you don't see families.
And that's why you don't see families there. And so for Mamdani to say, you know what, don't drink from the most prominent coffee chain in the city until workers get a fair shake. You can't. It's impossible to imagine a New York mayor doing that. I would never in a million years think a New York mayor would do that. Now,
Our current mayor is on a trip to Israel now.
Right, exactly. Like, big picture, is it a huge thing? No, but it's an important thing, and it's something that New Yorkers never thought they would get. They never thought they would get. And they voted for it, and now they're getting it, and they won it against all odds, against the most fanatical, maniacal, Zionist capitalists that this country knows, against the Bill Ackmans, right?
Right.
Who poured, millions of dollars into the race. And so, look, you got to take things as they come. He's flawed like everybody else, but so far, this is what you voted for, right?
This is what you voted for, and take your victories where you get them.
Right.
Like, that is a pretty big victory when Bill Ackman and Michael Bloomberg literally put fucking tens of millions of dollars into this race and lost against a freaking Muslim who refused to acknowledge Israel's right to exist as an apartheid state. Like, take the win. It doesn't mean you can't criticize, but take the win.
Of course. No doubt about it.
Please clap.